A moderate earthquake just hit a region surrounding Islamabad and Peshawar, including both of these metropolitan cities. And the earthquake was said to be originated from the Hindu Kush mountains, and it was of a 5.1 Richter scale magnitude, which obviously is not that big an earthquake, and obviously the depth was greater than 150 kilometers, and it did not really seem to bother the Pakistani public. It did not really seem to affect the smooth going and the working of the Pakistani livelihoods. But it is a caution that if something of a bigger scale comes like it did in 2015, like it did in 2005, Pakistanis are not really ready to deal with the calamities, deal with the catastrophes, and deal with the natural disasters, so to speak. Because traditionally, the most of the structures, most of the buildings in Pakistani, neighborhoods, be that suburban neighborhoods, be that urban neighborhoods, or to an extent, well, most importantly, Pakistan's rural areas have this traditional form of construction, which is called masonry construction. Masonry construction means just standing a building up from the ground, based upon masonry works by laying brick on brick and then further adding embellishments to that. There are regions of Pakistan which still to this day rely on unbaked, uncooked clay bricks, which don't really have any chance in front of a calamity like an earthquake or maybe a flood. So what needs to be done right now is that the government should really put its head into instilling a culture of construction and enforcing a culture of construction that would require constructors to build braced structures. Now, what are braced structures? Braced structures are structures that involve reinforcement through steel and other metals, which obviously possesses more strength, so to speak, the tensile strength to withstand any natural calamity, any natural disaster. If not withstand it, then at least put up a fight against it. Pakistanis are obviously ready to deal with the consequences of a natural disaster such as an earthquake or a flood, but we are not ready to deal with such natural disasters as they are actually happening. We are not prepared. We are definitely prepared to deal with the aftermath, but we're not prepared to deal with the disaster itself. And even when it comes to the aftermath, Pakistanis do rely on the military to an extent, and all these organizations, all these governing bodies, which are supposed to be there to deal with that stuff. They fall back on the military and they fall back on volunteer work by NGOs, which is certainly not a bad thing. And all these institutions exist there, so they can work towards the betterment of Pakistan. They can work towards making the general Pakistani life a little bit easier. But this government in this modern age, I know in the past many of the governments, and I'm not going to name any names, did not hold the Pakistani life in very high regard. But currently, in this age of social media, in this age of massive scrutiny, everything that is being done by the government, everything that is being done by the bureaucracy is under a lot of scrutiny. People microanalyze these things. People, have debates over these things. People follow everything that is being done by the people who rule them. So why can't we as a nation enforce this change in the construction culture, enforce this change in the disaster management culture to help make braced structures, help make structures that would be able to withstand any natural calamity, any natural disaster? We should be working towards that goal, because the Pakistani life matters. I know it is very, very saddening that I even have to say this, but the Pakistani life matters. And prevention against such natural calamities, such natural disasters matters. A country like Japan, which is hit by earthquakes more frequently than any other country in the world, has the most well-braced and well-designed structures, and it has the ability to withstand any natural disaster that comes Japan's way. Why can't Pakistan do that? I know we lack the resources to an extent. I know we lack the funding, but even at a private level, could the government not enforce bylaws? Could the government not enforce, this culture of making structures that are supposed to withstand? Buildings collapse every day in phase of construction. Buildings collapse here and there in terms of facing with earthquakes and floods. Whole populations disappear when Pakistan is hit by a natural disaster. I know the NDMA is doing a good job at handling all of these things, and things are a lot better than they were, what, 10, 15 years ago. But still, there is a long way to go. Pakistan has to accomplish a lot in terms of disaster management. Pakistan has to take care of a lot of things so that Pakistan is able to not just deal with the consequence of such said national disasters, but Pakistan is also able to deal with these events of a massive magnitude while they are happening and as they are happening. So there's still a long way to go when it comes to disaster management, but I hope we would get there. But we cannot get there without the awareness of the public and without the enforcing of such laws which would in turn make sure that Pakistan becomes a natural disaster safe country, if not a natural disaster proof country, then certainly a natural disaster resistant country. There is a long way to go. There will be calamities in the future, there will be floods in the future, there will be earthquakes in the future. What we can do is we can become more aware of them, and we can know how to protect ourselves against such natural calamities.